Hello, good
Oh, what happened to me?
good
Oh,
morning, good evening, and hello to everybody
Afternoon.
out there. Afternoon.
What time have we all got? 7:06 a.m. here in 10 degrees Celsius, Melbourne, on a Saturday morning. Jason, what have you got up there?
5:03 p.m. and well, it's 91 degrees Fahrenheit here in Florida.
nice.
That sounds nice.
So yeah, this is not the time of the year normally when you want to come to Florida.
Oh, we heard that when
Uh,
we were over there for the 12 scale worlds, and people were saying, "Oh, it's so
mhm.
hot and everything." We got there and it was beautiful.
Yeah. So well, let's see. When was that race? Was it at the end of the year?
Yes, it was. When was that? Like December. Just
Yeah. So you got the good weather.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
was
the good
magnificent.
weather.
So,
Yeah,
so
like
91 Fahrenheit is 32 Celsius. So that's like
Oh,
a
nice warm.
like a good winter's day for us
Yeah,
down
nice.
here.
A nice winter's day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the October through December, obviously then into January, February, those are good times to be in Florida. Um, but yeah, the summer is pretty rough here.
Yeah. Yeah. Very muggy. Cool. Well, welcome everybody. We're doing our Vintage Bash live stream, and this is number 5 now. So hopefully hopefully getting slightly better at it.
hopefully you don't
And
drop out.
yep, and dropouts. I've updated all my network drivers and played around. So let's hope this is nice and stable this time. So yeah, so hopefully if you've joined us this morning, nice and early here, or later in the afternoon elsewhere, welcome and
Hmm.
thank you very much. So this week we have got a very special guest. Uh, J Concepts is this year's Bash 4's title sponsor. So we're pretty excited and happy about that. And as you can see this week, we have Jason Ruona, who is the was it
Industry icon.
founder owner icon. So yeah, welcome Jason. And
No, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to do this and being on with you guys here.
magnificent. So we'll mute that. I'll get the chat. So if you guys out there are on the chat or want to say hello or ask some questions for Jason, please do so. I'll bring that in shortly. So yeah, Jason, if you wanted to sort of say a little hello and maybe tell us about yourself, a bit of your RC history. Um,
Yeah, so I guess with RC, I mean, I've been kind of doing it since the '80s. From having the Tamiya cars, and getting into racing in the end of 1990 is when I got into RC racing,
yep.
and I've been hooked ever since. The I wanted to get into RC because of real monster trucks, and the trucks in general really kind of appealed to me, and those or still do. I really like trucks as a personal vehicle and just the way they look, and so I was getting RC cars that were trucks, the Midnight Pumpkin, the Lunchbox,
Yep.
the Clodbuster, the Kyosho Big Brute, the Wild Willie. Those were basically my first RC cars, and but I think the Midnight Pumpkin and the Clodbuster is really what hooked me on RC in general, and it just and then recognizing through the local hobby store that there was competitive racing
Mm.
was sort of the next level, and from there I got the JRXT because it was a truck again, right? So I got my first racing vehicle was a JRXT stadium truck, and I got an RC10 not long after that, and um, just been hooked on racing ever since then.
Now, Jason, I'm going to butt in right here
Yep.
because there's an elephant in the room here, and we need
Mm-hmm.
to address this really early on. So, once upon a time, you were a cool guy with a Losi truck, and then something happened in your head that made you go to AE. Because down here, at that stage in RC, it was like you're either a Chevy man or a Ford man. You're either a Losi guy or an associated guy, and you turned.
Yeah.
You better have a good explanation for this because we need to know what happened.
So let's see. Well, I think the reason I got the Losi stadium truck is because there wasn't an associated stadium truck at that point. And so that was it right there. A very similar paint job to what I wanted to do. Mine didn't turn out quite that good, but that truck right there, I brought it out onto the driveway and I jumped it off of my normal jump, and I just couldn't believe the performance. And yeah, I was hooked ever since. But I think the hobby store owner was a very big associated fan follower. He loved the associated product, and he actually gave me an RC10 to drive. Is how I got the actual RC10 buggy. And so I drove that out there. But I think I still had an RC10 buggy, and the JRXT stadium truck is what I would race every weekend. And what really changed for me is I went to the 91 Winter Champs when they debuted the RC10T, because that was local for me.
Yeah.
And that was the first big race I ever competed in. And I was able to get into the race as an entry. I raced two-wheel drive stock, and I'd been racing for like 3 or 4 months. So I started racing at the end of 90. I got to the Winter Champs in February, and that's when I saw Cliff Lett drive the RC10T. He put it out there and for a practice run, and had the narrow front tires on it, and the low profile body. And I was just decided at that point that that's what I had to have. And so as soon as I could get one on order, we got one on order, and I got it in, as soon as we could get it in, I built it, and we went racing with it. And, it progressed from there. And then I had the RC10T and then the RC10 buggy, and I never went back to Team Losi. We'll call it. That's what we're calling it, right? We're not calling TLR.
No,
here.
it's not quite.
No.
It's not quite.
Yeah, it's Team Losi. I never went back to Team Losi till the early 2000s as a professional driver. Then I went and raced for Team Losi for about 2 years, and then back to Team Associated again. So, yeah, it's I guess the RC10T is what put me over the top. That's what made me commit, I think, to the Associated brand, was the RC10T, because I like trucks. That was the biggest class at the time. And that truck was really, really so cool and amazing when it came out. Seeing it at the Winter Champs, the powder coated chassis, and they really nailed it with that release. I think
it was better. The RC10 at that stage was better than the Losi, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time they were on the JRX Pro, then the Pro SC was their two buggies, I think. And I just didn't think that just going by, my memory and what I, raced with, I didn't feel like those two vehicles were really on the level of the RC10 for whatever reason. It just, they didn't quite have the same performance, even though they changed. They eventually went from the 5-link rear suspension to the H arms and to the swept back front arms on the Pro SE, and they tried to make a bunch of upgrades. But I think really for them, I mean, in my opinion, the iconic car for them, I think, is the Double X. To me, that was their first one they kind of hit maybe out of the park a little bit. And to this day, I still look at the car. I have one, and I still think it's a very cool car.
It's a bit of a eye opener when you look at that car and you realise that it's now 32 years old. It's even more of an eye opener when you look back at a Pro SE and you see the injection molded chassis and the Stiffer arms and all that sort of stuff. I think it's fair to say that they were a bit of a pioneer when it came to injection molding, the colors, the color coded pistons, the color coded spur gears, and unfortunately, all they got lost with TLR.
Yeah, I think what for them they were a little bit better at adapting to the 90s than Associated was. Associated was, I'm not going to say stuck in the 80s, but they were very slow to respond to fluorescence and to what was going on in the 90s and pop culture and everything else. And the Associated car was, for them a big move was going from the gold to the black chassis. And and but I think what it did was it made all of us that ran the brands, it made us probably more creative in building the cars because there was a lot of ways to build an Associated car. And you knew if somebody was a good builder just by looking at their car. You didn't really have to meet them, you didn't have to know them, so much as online now. But I would just pick somebody's car up and you would know if they were a good builder or not, if they had an RC10. And today the items are pretty easy to put together, pretty easy to build, and they all they all kind of look the same when they're built, with the exception of the wiring. Now the wiring is the part that if somebody kind of is a more precise or meticulous builder. And back then it was the whole car you could see. So yeah, I think that was one thing. So I think with the Associated, maybe we got a little left behind in the early stages of the 90s with just kind of keeping up. But maybe the drivers, they had to do their own keeping up to make it look on par, to bring some of these things of the 90s into the into play. But I know when Losi or Team Losi eventually did the LXT, I remember that truck was amazing. The stadium truck, the LXT. I got a feeling he's got one here somewhere.
There's
But
probably something you need to know, which if you haven't already worked out, Jason, is that
I've worked it out. I think.
Lou
I
is
think I
a
worked
big
it out.
fan.
I think I worked that out already.
Yeah.
But
I can appreciate the RC10. It's a very cool car, and that rivalry that we had here in the late 80s, well, not so much late 80s, but probably through the 90s, from the RC10 team car, the graphite team car, right through to when I stopped, which was 2000 with the Losi Triple X. That was always Losi associated Losi, and then we had some people with Schumacher cars try to ruin the party for us, but it never worked. It was always Losi versus AE, and obviously the tracks in Australia were a little different to what you guys in the States ran. By the end of the 90s, you guys were almost on very similar tracks to what you are on now, like the polished clay indoor, little double jumps and stuff like that. Whereas we were still on dirt, like you've seen the pictures from the Vintage Bash. But the cars on those sort of surfaces were just magnificent. And I think, one of the reasons this whole vintage scene has taken off so much is because it's like the racing of these old rear motor buggies is like a completely different discipline when you compare it to what the cars are like today. Today is literally on road with jumps. The young kids with the super fast reflexes are absolutely incredible to watch. I watch in awe, and I think that even some of the best Aussie drivers back in the day that used to be competitive with the old rear motor platforms, if you took them at their prime and put a transmitter in their hands with one of the modern cars, it'd just be nowhere, because there's such a different skill set that you need now compared to what it was then. And I think being able to drive these cars and experience the fluoros, the colors, the look of each individual buggy being different to the other is what's made this whole wave that we're riding with vintage cars such a success.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was unique about that generation is everybody was still trying to work out what they thought was their philosophy for designing and building the
Yeah.
RC cars. And there was a big difference between what a Team Losi car looked like and a Team Associated car. And I think that was nice. And then if you want to include Schumacher in there and you want to include Kyosho, they had entirely, for the most part, different looking cars as well. So you really, and today the parts between some of these cars are almost a little interchangeable. Back then they were definitely not interchangeable. Any part on the car, I don't think would work. So, today a lot of these things are more similar because of the performance on the tracks that we run now are the expectations a little different, and the industry is just a whole lot different today than than it was then. But one story that I have about questioning some driving skill at one time, we were going to the 2005 Worlds in Italy, and this track was a rough and bumpy track. Like when we got there was kind of some grass growing around, and it was like kind of not well maintained at all, especially on compared to the standards that we were racing at today, or even then outdoors. And I remember getting there and thinking, wow, the Ryan Cavallari's, the Ryan Mayfields, the Jared Tebows, I was like, man, these guys are going to struggle. Like they've only run on like blue groove tracks with bar tires, and I've never seen them run on a track like this. And but I was definitely wrong. Those guys, they put their cars down, and they were amazing. Cavallari had no problem. I thought he was going to be the one that was toughest to adjust. He won 4-wheel drive, obviously TQ'd and got second in 2-wheel drive. Neil Craig won 2-wheel there on the last lap, or second to last lap, I think. And I was amazed with Mayfield. He'd never been to a Worlds before. He had never even been there for a warm-up race. He TQ'd 4-wheel. He got third in both classes, I think. And we got photos from the track with the holes in it, and it looks like what's underneath the LXT here, but with big holes. And these guys were just flying, and I was like, you know what? I'm like, these guys are awesome. I'm like, I'm signing off.
Yeah, I think for the current driver to go back to that is probably not the hardest, because they probably grew up driving on the looser type tracks. But I just think for the guys that were used to running on nothing but the dirt tracks, to go now to these triple jumps where you've got to land the car on a 1 foot radius to be able to make the corner and that sort of stuff, it's a little bit different. And to me, that's it's like a different discipline. It's still off-road, but it's not the same. And I think personally, that's probably one of the reasons why it's this is just growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's your favorite truck, Jason, the mighty Losi LXT, equipped with hydrodrive.
That was a good truck. I remember when that thing came out and racing the guys I was competitive with. And I had an RC10T, and they were running that. And I remember thinking, this thing works pretty good.
Yep.
And of course, I still held pretty strong against it for sure. But yeah, I definitely thought about driving one every once in a while. Wondering what that thing would be like.
There's something else that caught my attention, just to interrupt you. I did find a picture here of one of your body shells, and we do share something in common, it seems. I'll show you once I can navigate my way through here. I saw that your colours look something like this.
Yep.
And my colours look something like that.
Oh, the touring car body here.
Yeah, but we like the black and white checkers, the orange and yellow, the blue. So you are a cool guy after all. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's a back in the day special. You can see what's on the bench, the mighty JRXT.
Look at those rear tires.
Yeah, I know they were woeful.
You got to watch out. They're going to hurt you if you touch them.
They were. They were rock hard. The tires were made out of the same plastic as the H arms were, I think.
Yeah, they just made them the same time.
Yeah.
Efficient. Yeah, it's a big difference when we grab out the old tires these days, and just surprising how hard they are.
I'm like I have a bunch of them at the house that I have like a collection of different tires, and I'll pull them out occasionally. And I'm like, how did we even go around the track with these?
Yeah.
It's like you look at it, and I mean, the tracks that we ran on were at Lake Park at times for our races were very hard packed, and they'd be really loose. And I remember running those Losi mini pins and the Proline 90s, and they were the I think the Losis were what did they have, the kit compound, and then what was the next one? Not it was a K, and then HT. They were HTs, and then the Pro lines were XTRs. No, before that XT.
Yeah,
XT, the first one.
And we were running with those things, and I pull those out of the box now, and I'm like, how do we even go around the track with these? It's like I don't.
And surprisingly, on I can tell you, I've mounted some out of the box, put them to good use, and on certain tracks, they're not all that bad. So when we're on the topic of tires, how did you get into tire manufacturing?
Well, we started at the 2003 Worlds. We did the car, the BJ4 Worlds, or the BJ4, and then we did the Illusion body for the B4, and then we transitioned through the four-wheel. We made the Worlds edition, and then when we were actually before we were going to start the Worlds edition car, Associated came to us and they wanted to work with us and essentially buy the design of the BJ4 so that they could put a four-wheel drive in their lineup. What they didn't know is that we had a Worlds edition already kind of designed. We were working on. We were doing some testing with Ryan Mayfield with it, and we agreed to the deal with Associated, and essentially what it entailed is finishing our car and making it a production car. So we didn't just like say, hey, here's what we have, and collect a check. Like we pretty much started from scratch designing the third generation of our BJ4 vehicle. And that's what the B44 was the third generation of the BJ4. And so we worked on that. And then when that project was over, we did the 2007 Worlds, which was in Japan. And during that time, we started transitioning we were working on some wheel designs. We started working on the tires because tires, wheels, and bodies are really my biggest interest. Sure, everybody loves the cars and everything, but I knew from my racing, the tires made the biggest difference that you can do. You can change whatever you want to do all day on these cars, but if you put the right tire on, it's game changing. And so for me, that was the item I was interested in, the greatest. And then the bodies and wheels I felt was a way to personalize the vehicle and kind of make it yours. And that was my other interest. So as we kind of transitioned out of the car, the four-wheel drive project, and kind of moving that towards Associated, we got into the tires and wheels, and kind of never looked back. We've been doing the trying to outfit the different scales, the different genres of vehicles, and I'm not even sure the number of different tires, part numbers, and compounds we have at the moment, but it's a ton.
You mentioned the BJ4 there. We had a question from one of the guys, Alan Stons, and especially in the context of all of the re-releases that companies are doing these days. He was wondering if you're going to have a re-release of the BJ4, or if that's even a possibility.
Well, it's been asked a lot. especially at the, we did a vintage race the beginning of the year, the Clash event, but we had a lot of people ask about it. But the issue with that car is we used a lot of associated parts and then modified them to fit how we needed them, which was part of what the reason why Associated was interested in the project, because they realized that a lot of their differential parts and different things were handling and working in the four-wheel drive class. So that was attractive to them, but that was enabling us to get in the game with that car, was the fact that they had a lot of parts that we could use and modify. So for us to really make that car, we would really have to start from scratch. We'd have to make the molds for the gear case. We'd have to do all the diff parts, the gears, rear arms, hub carriers, go through the front end and make the same parts there. And I think if we were going to go down that road, we might as well just build a brand new modern car. Because I think we would have the same investment in it as we would bringing back the BJ4. We might as well just make a modern car, and the sales would be much greater overall. It'd make more sense for us as a company for sales, but obviously the BJ4 would be great because it'd be fun, but you kind of want to, if we were going to ever do it, you'd want to do it right in terms of making all the parts yourself. And then, so you could actually benefit from the replacement parts and people wanting to upgrade or change things. And that was something that we didn't get to benefit from the first time around, because if somebody needed, replacement parts, the items that usually would break were associated parts. So they were really we were really helping them generate more sales for B4 parts by running more four-wheel drive cars. So, if you're able to do it again, all over again, we would want that to benefit us. After you put that kind of an investment into it, you definitely would want it to benefit the company.
I guess a question that got asked too is, when will post 2000 cars become vintage? And I call it, to me, it's a little bit like the muscle car. I can see there's a piston and conrod behind your head, so you must be a bit of a car nut as well. The 70s muscle cars, you can't tell me that like a early 90s Mustang is a muscle car, because it isn't. That muscle car era only happened in a certain time frame, and I guess our vintage scene, where the cars were all different to each other, was probably early 80s through to the late 90s, maybe the very early 2000s. After that, they just became this homogenous thing where all the cars were exactly the same. I mean, I could pretty much put 4 current cars in front of you, like particularly the four-wheel drives now, and they're all, the parts are probably interchangeable. The motors are all in the middle. They've all got a center diff. They've all got a oil-filled center in front. The vertical shocks, the shock angles are the same. The length of the shock shafts are the same. The arm lengths are the same. The shape of the arms, there's no uniqueness anymore. So at what point, some of the cars in the early 2000s, I guess, and that's probably where you would have probably more experience than I sort of stopped in 2000 with the off-road buggies, but the last car I remember in the two-wheel drive, for example, would have been a Triple X CR, but I know that they ran that platform for 6 or 7 years. And the four-wheel drives, I think that, I remember seeing a Laser ZX5, I think it was, and then there was some of the Tamiyas, Aaron, the four, what were they? The 4-1.
No, the 5.
4-1-5, yeah.
The 5.
But they had the mid-motor with the batteries and stuff like that. When will the post 2000 cars be vintage? Look, I think you could probably do a class for those sort of cars, but I don't think they're going to ever have that same unique attraction as what the earlier cars have.
Yeah, I think that the one of the things is, as you speak about it, the one thing that comes to mind is maybe vintage isn't the right term.
Yep.
Is the issue is because, like you said, a B4 at this point is vintage.
Yep.
In the grand scheme of things, it's a 20-year-old buggy, and I think, uh, you know, so at some point we have to really kind of bracket in this. My big thing is you don't want to eliminate the quintessential vintage cars, right? If you allow people to run up to the B4, you're going to run a B4 if you're racing. So you don't want to eliminate the tub chassis RC10, or the the JRX Pro, and you don't want to eliminate some of these things from the equation, because they're sort of really they're the vintage cars that are really kind of keeping this, at the moment, keeping it popular. So, and when associate, they continue to re-release these things, and the parts are out there, and there's 100 combinations of RC10 stuff. You don't really want to get rid of, that type of vehicle from the vintage side of things. So, at the race that we did, I wasn't in control of the rules or anything, but I didn't know anything about it until I really got there and started racing. I knew I was in this Legends invite. I knew I had an RC10 Worlds car, and I had a B7, and I just told them, "Hey, put me in the classes I'm supposed to be in." And I got there, and then I kind of figured out they had this rear motor revival class and stuff like that, which, guys were running like B5s, rear motor B5s, and um, so yeah, maybe at some point, in order to incorporate the B4s or the B5s or whatever the case may be, you have to really put them in the race too, because you don't really want to turn away people or entries at some point, but you just don't want it to turn into another modern race, right? You essentially want to be able to preserve those beginning legacy models and brands. You want those to be around, and you want those to be the lion's share of the entries. And then at some point, there are going to be drivers that want to run B4s because they liked that generation, and I don't think you want to kick them to the curb. I think you do want to, invite them in, because hey, it's about entries, it's about participation. More than likely, if somebody is interested in racing a B4, they might build an RC10 or a Team Losi car too. That's what happens at this stuff, right? You get, first you start one, right? You have one, and then pretty soon you have two, then right? It's they multiply. Um, the more you get into it, and the more you see other people's cars, you think of ideas for the one you want to build, and that's how it works. Um, so yeah, we have to just decide at some point what these different generations are. If the RC10 and the early Team Losi stuff is the muscle car generation, then there's there's the whatever the next, generation of vehicles, and pretty much I kind of see where this is really kind of going is up to the 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 entering of the mid motor phase. I think everybody is essentially just kind of stopping there. They're saying, all right, we'll go all the way through the B5, but not the mid motor B5, just the rear motor B5, and then that's it. And
Yeah.
so, and then maybe the Losi 22 rear motor, right? That's you kind of race that with a B5, and that's kind of the end of it. And then from there, for us, it was the 2013 Cactus Classic, I think, when Tebow ran the mid motor Kyosho, and that's when it kind of changed here for us. And once things once a mid motor car becomes 20 years old, you got to decide what to do with them.
Yeah, we had interesting on the rear motor differentiation there. Just recently at our local, or at the Knox Club where the bash is going to be, we had a fifth weekend of the month, so we had like a little fun event, which was a rear motor what was it called? Rear Motor Masters, I think we called it.
Remote
Yeah,
Masters.
Yeah.
which was just glorified fun day. Everybody bring out
Yeah.
their tour drive rear motor cars, and we
Mm-hmm.
got like 80 something entries. Normally a club day we might get what 50 or so at best.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like everyone just came out with the rear motors to have a bit of fun. The weather was not great, but we stuck around, and it was amazing.
Yeah, I think what I see is, and this is no different, when you build a specific special event these days, um, racers and drivers love gearing up for something that has a date to it, right?
Mm.
And and I think in my day we just raced every weekend. It didn't matter. We didn't look at the weather. We didn't look at anything. We just went. And it's like we didn't try to outsmart the weather. We didn't. We just went.
Mm.
And most of the time we would race. It was very rare
Mm.
that we would not race because of the weather. And we're in Florida. The weather in the summer here, it rains every afternoon, and we still had incredible consistency in our club racing. But today it's a little different because if you everyone likes to gear up for something. They now we have these videos, we have the podcasts, we have social media, and this is the way that people bench race today. Whereas in our day, or
Mm.
my day, you had to go to the track to bench race for the most part. If you wanted to talk about RC, you needed to be there, and you needed to, and usually that was like you had one shovel in your hand, you're helping with the track, or you're watering. And everybody talks about, you talk for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you shovel for a few seconds, and then you talk for three. That's how it kind of worked. And stuff got done. Tracks got rebuilt and freshened up, and then you'd go to race the next day. But today everybody likes to talk about it, and then they like to gear up for that event that they want to go to. And which is a little bit, there's like positives and negatives to that for me, whereas what I see is the club racing isn't quite as popular as it used to be, because I think so much focus is put on these events that people gear up for, that they're willing to skip all these things in between just to gear up for this one that's getting the most amount of attention. And it wouldn't be any different for me, today, where it's like, sure, I could probably find somewhere to go club race, but it's like, I want to gear up for something, right? That's the whole idea today, is you're just like, I'm going to build this car, and I'm going to get this paint job, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And then you try to plan it and coincide with an event. And then you just kind of throw it all out there on that weekend, right? It's everything. So it's like you end up, you're getting up early, you're staying up late, you go through the whole weekend, you're kind of, you got to race, you got to turn marshal, you got to, you do all the pit stuff, and it's you're trying to get a lot done in like 3 days. And then when it's over, it's kind of like you have a hangover, and then you got to like rebuild your enthusiasm for that next thing, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I miss those club, like you're talking about, kind of announcing a specific club event, and then people get together, you get your 80 entries, and that's fantastic. But that's how our club races would be every weekend, right? Like, we would have a club race, and it would, in the Lake Park days, we would probably, average 150 entries for our club races. And then when it got closer to the winter champs, we would go to over 200, to where we couldn't even finish the whole thing in a day. A club race where people were just, where I remember being there at night, and there'd be no lights, and trying to finish, and trying to do that 2-wheel mod A main at, like where the, you can barely see. And you just don't have that today. It's so, but it's different. It's a different thing. And I think it's great that we can call on the racers, and we can organize these events, and we can get them together. And that's just how it's going to be, unless we could, maybe destroy the internet and social media and everything else, and people just knew they had to show up to race their cars and talk to their buddies, then this is probably how it's going to be.
Yeah, or wait till the next edition of the magazine got released so you could see people's results or see what the latest trick bits they put on their car or what manufacturer released a hop up that potentially make your car go slower or faster, Aaron. You got plenty
I
of
was
those.
I was going to say, I think you've hit on something that was I always found interesting, and it sounds like you did too. Was the way that you built your car was something you were really proud of because they were individual. Like it
Yeah.
was, you were doing a lot of your own modifications yourself back in your lab, whatever you want to call it, the garage, your shed, whatever, and you were modifying bits and pieces, kitchen, yeah, back room cookie where we used to sit and tune motors, and one of the things was you couldn't just go and buy stuff, so you'd make it and then you'd want to go and show people off on the weekends where you go and show them and test your new bits and pieces rather than put it out on the internet and do everything else. And it's sort of like a culture that I think's changed, because I know you said something that really resonated with me was you pick up someone's RC10 and you'd look at how they built it and you'd know whether they were on it or not. Like there was that big thing of you could really build a car or not build a car. Whereas now it's you just go and buy all the parts and put it together, and it's basically 95% of the way of the world of getting a really, really fast car. Whereas it used to be performance and looks. So and I love what you guys have done with the RC10s, where you've got the cool blue anodized bits that you can add for the steering and the motor plates. And we used to have to do that all at home and everything else. And I think that's a bit missing because you can't make your car an extension of your personality anymore as much, if you know what I mean. It's just the wiring and basically paint jobs.
Yeah. Well, and what it does is it's removed a lot of the hobby from it. Now it's just it's, it used to be a builder's hobby, and now it's more of a driver's hobby because before you could, if you were a good driver and a good builder, you'd have a lot of success. If you were a so-so driver but a great builder, you could kind of bridge that gap a little bit. And now really you can just put the car together if you set your electronics to whatever the hot setup is, and you're a hell of a driver, you're going to go right to the top. Because there was not really a whole lot of secrets there. So we've lost some skilled builders, people that are really good at doing some of these things.
Brush motors.
I mean, and that's something that I can only imagine how much practice I probably would have gotten had we had brushless back then. We would have never stopped. As it was, I would never, I would go back to the pits and have another battery charging, and I'd throw it right back out there, and I would burn my motor to the ground, just and be like, all right, time to change it out or cut it. We would just run and run and run. Until you hit that one run where you're just like, all right, everything's slowing down now. This thing gonna and then when we had the brush motor that really helped me in practice was the Reedy Sonic, the green label one with the big
So the one with a big commutator,
that was great for racing because you didn't have to cut it near as often, and man, that was great. It was kind of like the introduction to like what brushless could have been in that day and time, because it was like instead of whatever we did, I don't remember how many runs we would go before you cut a motor, but in 4-wheel drive it was probably a couple. In 2-wheel drive I think you could probably go 3, 4, 5 maybe, and but with the Reedy Sonic, I remember we would go like, I don't know, 20. It seemed like you go like 20 runs or something. It was quite a bit. And that was a big advantage for practicing and just, I don't know, just not wanting to unsolder it. I mean, that's the other thing is you're soldering every single time you hit the track, right? You're soldering your battery in and out. And you're getting that in and out of the car every single run. You had to have a soldering iron on and going. Now I don't even bring a soldering iron to the races.
Good old scope irons.
The old scopes,
Like I didn't bring. I mean, we had the Unger is what our soldering iron was. That we always really liked. And I mean, now you don't even bring one to the race. Like if you have it, you only need one if you have an issue, right? Like you have a big issue, you're like, oh man, I need a soldering iron. People are running around for you. And
it's true.
It is.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like, yeah.
Back then, it's in your pit. You're just like, all right, what do I need to do? And
in a tailpipe of the car that you park next to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put your soldering iron in there, and we had a 12-volt one. It was a scope.
Yeah.
And people would come and ask if they could borrow it, and you knew if they looked a bit sus, you wouldn't give them the soldering iron because these things used to heat up in about 5 seconds, and if you left it on for too long, the whole tip of the soldering iron would look like ET's finger.
Yep.
No, what have we done? That was your soldering iron.
So yeah, it's interesting, the way it is today, but I don't think that going back to any kind of brushed motors that you have to cut the comm on and the old batteries, I think for sure the brushless and the new batteries are such an advantage and so much better.
Yeah.
You could argue that the cars from a B4 to a B7, you could probably argue that they're not all that much better, right? Like, but you can't really argue that going from a brushed motor and the batteries to the lipos and the brushless motor, it's like, people ask me, I'm like, if I build a vintage, are you going to put brush motor? I'm like, no, I'm not building it like that. Like, I love the car. I didn't like the electronics that much. Like, Novak HPC or a Tekin speed control or whatever, later we had the LRPs, which was my favorite. The LRP was my favorite, but that was tough. I mean, I want to say the last Worlds we ran brushed was like 2007, I think, and they sound great. The motor sounds. I mean, it's hard to beat especially if you got your touring car. If you had like an 8-turn or something in that thing, a 9-turn. Man, they sound amazing.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get that sound, but yeah, it's hard to beat the electronic equipment today, and that is a big advantage.
Yeah, because
for nostalgia, I think the brush is super cool, and there was a bit of a black art with regards to cutting the comm and making sure that your brush springs are the right tension on it, and the shape of the brush itself, and how much timing you ran, and the gearing, and I mean that little black art is gone. So yeah, for nostalgic purposes, by all means, but you can keep your NiCads and your nickel metal hydrides to yourself because lipos all the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, what happened is in those days as a team racer, we had a motor guy, right? Mike Reedy, Jim Dieter, Neil McCurdy, all these guys I could think of that were the old school top end motor builders in those old days. You had a motor guy because you needed one, right? Like that was like, there was a prep, there was maintenance between races. And, for us, we would take our motor out after a qualifier. We'd bring it over to Reedy, and he had like a little wood thing that he used. And he's like, he put your name on it. He put it in his queue and, he would get it ready for you. And you'd go over there and pick it up out of his workstation, and it'd be all freshened up with new brushes, and you could tell it had been motor sprayed off, right? Everything was clean, and you put it back in and you're ready to roll. And today, like, you don't have a motor guy. Like, it's just the only people that have motor guys today are stock racers, because they're they want the ultimate performance, and they're squeezing everything they can out of 17.5s and the batteries and everything else. But if you're a mod guy, you're boring. Like, it's the easiest thing to do. Like, sometimes I'm like, man, I better check my motor screws to make sure they're tight, because I never look at it, right? Like, it's just in there, and it's just, you just make sure your motor screws are tight, because if the only reason you're taking it out is because you had a problem, and then you're pissed, right? Oh, I got to take my motor out. Where's the soldering? Now, where's the soldering iron? But yeah, from that standpoint, that equipment's been really nice, and I think that it's going to get better too, and I think that this 10 scale off-road racing, with the addition of the worlds, this year being in Australia and being on an outdoor track, uh, them having a team associated vintage race in Vegas where they're going to run on dirt. Obviously, you guys got your race going on, and increased coverage and support of these things that are going on. I think that it could motivate the industry to do some more 10 scale outdoor racing again on dirt, on a world level, and in the United States. And I think that would help the business a little bit and bring back that third condition that we're missing for us, which is, we run indoors with slick tires. It's great. There's a lot of people that absolutely love it. It's pretty easy for the most part in terms of what you're doing with the tires. Then there's carpet, which is it's pretty straightforward too. But then you add that we need that dirt outdoor element, a manageable outdoor track size wise, that if you have to work on it weather wise, if there's going to be issues, people have make the mistake if they make these gigantic tracks that you don't want to work on, because it's just so massive. But with the 10 scale buggy, you can make these things a reasonable size, and if you have to work on it, 3 or 4 guys can work on it. These 8 scale tracks sometimes are so huge that in their outdoors, if you get rained out, there's no hope that you're getting that thing back ready to go, because it's just so massive. You have to have big machines to work on it, or and none of that stuff. You don't necessarily need it for 10 scale.
What is surprising to me is that the 8 scale scene is enormous. There's a lot of people running the 8 scale outdoor dirt jumps, all that sort of stuff. To convert some of those 8 scale tracks to be able to run a 10 scale buggy, obviously, with the massive jumps and stuff like that, it's probably not feasible. But the attraction to race on outdoor tracks, I think, is still big in the RC scene. I'm actually surprised that no one's taken it and ran with it. I guess the biggest problem that we had, like, for example, when guys come and race down at the Knox track, is that the mid-motor mid-motor two-wheel drive buggies are not very good on that type of surface. It's more, the rear motor style setup or a four-wheel drive buggy. Do you think perhaps in the future that manufacturers might say, hey, we need this third discipline, as you call it, to race outdoor buggies, and with buggies that are actually designed for that type of surface, like a rear motor? Let's redesign a rear motor buggy with the current technology.
I don't know what, because we're talking about Associated, X-Ray, and Schumacher are really the 3 brands that drive the business today. And I don't see X-Ray being the first, and I don't see Schumacher being the first, because they're probably the lion's share of their sales is carpet type racing, and I don't see them getting in that area. The only company I could see getting into it is maybe Associated, because they have so many of these vintage cars, and eventually they're going to get so far along with these re-releases that it's going to start overlapping the generation that they have now. So
re-release the Big 5.
Yeah, exactly. So it might end up happening sort of organically for them, where they get so far along with these re-releases that people start using them more commonly, like this 89 car, or eventually down the road, you got to think that there's 91 cars, there's going to be B2s, B3s, all these. I think I could see them going all the way to the B4 within the next couple years. I mean, I don't know anything, but just going by, if it doesn't take uh, a rocket scientist to look at the rate that they're releasing these cars at and realize that, hey, they could be on the B4 by the end of next year or the year after that. It's like, um, so at some point you're going to have available fairly um, modern cars to use, and that may be the way that it works. Is they're going to get so far down the road going vintage that it's actually kind of meeting up with the current, and then they'll start to kind of intermingle with each other.
You touch on the associated race in Vegas. We, obviously we're on the other side of the planet, but we do read the internet a lot. And I think I speak for myself, and I know the other two guys that are here with me would sell a kidney to be able to go there. But for us, with the exchange rate and everything the way it is, probably not going to be able to make it this year. I see the rule sets that they've adopted. They've sort of been in conjunction with the guys in the UK with the class eras and stuff like that. I think for them, this is going to be a massive success, and to have all the legends there as well, it'd be just magnificent. And hopefully, this really gives people a feel of what we are trying to do down here, which is revive the old cars and keep them. The older the cars are, the cooler they are. So then, people don't just gravitate to race the latest version of a car they can get hold of. They're quite happy to drive a an 85 Halsey car or something like that.
Yeah, I think that they didn't necessarily know what they were getting into with this vintage race.
Sounds familiar.
And and that's not any knock against anybody there. It's just, I think that they feel like, hey, we're coming out with all these cars. We do they go to an 8-scale race in Vegas called the Silver State.
Yeah.
And I think the idea was thrown out there to have a vintage race in Vegas, and it got the approval. And then from there, I think then it was like, oh, now what have we done? Like we have to promote this. We have to work on it, because as these entries just don't start piling in overnight without a little bit of work, effort, promotion. And when you're associated and you're signing up to have a major event at a hotel in Las Vegas, that doesn't come cheap. And they might be just better off telling people how much it does cost to do it, because they're charging quite a bit for the entry fee, and obviously that's a deterrent for some people. But I think if you told people, hey, I don't know what the number is, we've done a bunch of events, but we've never had one in a hotel in Vegas, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a $40,000 to $50,000 facility that you got to rent. And so it's not so much that they're trying to make money with this event, because if you're going to spend, let's just call it $50,000 to have that facility, you're a long ways away from breaking even on that game. And I'm sure if you ask them, would they love to break even, I'm sure they would tell you, man, we would love to break even on this race. But I think it's a promotion for the cars, the vintage scene, and they have the legacy with the drivers and everything to put together an attractive event, because these individuals are such a part of their past. The Cliff Lett, the Jay Halsey, the Masamis, the Matt Francises, or whoever you want to pull out. They were so fortunate with their drivers and racers throughout the years that they can lean on these things. They have the budget to bring them in and have this race. But I think what they're learning now is how to promote a race and show people what they're going to get for their money. And it's turning around, I think, a little bit for them. It's coming together a little bit better. and for them, they're starting to get their entries. People are starting to understand what it's all going to be all about, what to expect, and I think it's going to go, pretty well overall. I don't think you're going to break even. I think you're going to lose money on it, but I think if it's about minimizing the damage and delivering on what you said you're going to do. And I think that's all you can. I mean, that's all we've ever done as holding races that we've either built the track for or hired a track or hired race builders and race directors, and you're not going to make a lot of money off of this stuff, but you're trying to minimize the damage that you could do on yourself, and you want people to enjoy it. And then if you want to stay committed to it and you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road and you can build those entry numbers up, and who knows, maybe Associated, they see the need for it year after year, and eventually they get to the point where it's a 500 entry race and they could get their numbers, their costs down. Then all of a sudden maybe they can make a little bit of money on it, and then it makes sense to them 100% around, right? So yeah, I hope people don't get burnt out on vintage events, and I think they still see it as a positive in the community, and the drivers are still scheduling their time to go and do them. Because I mean, I've seen a lot of the people signing up for the race. It's primarily the same people we had at the vintage race at Hoosier earlier in the year, and it's really the guys that are specializing in this side of racing right now, and they feel that whatever their distance is with a modern car to the best guy, say they feel it's 10 seconds difference between them and a modern guy with a modern car, and if they can concentrate on vintage and they can make that half of what it was, they're interested in that. That's where they're motivated to go there, to spend the money to go and do it, because they're like, hey, maybe instead of being 15 seconds off of somebody, now I'm 5, right? Because I'm a little more dedicated. I know a little more about it than they do. They might be a little better driver than me, but I've made up, similar to maybe the old days, you've made up a little bit with your wrenching and your time, and you're a little bit closer to the fastest guy. That's attractive to racers right now, because they see it as something they can come in and be the superstar. And those are the guys I see kind of signing up and committing to that type of race. Even though the expenses might be a little high, they're excited to do it, and that kind of that outweighs the costs.
That's such a different scene to what we create with a vintage bash, Jason. We down here in Australia for many years, they've tried to run race meetings with the vintage buggies, and what ends up happening is the guy that you look at in the mirror that once upon a time used to be competitive, well, now he's so far off the pace, and most of us on the wrong side of 50. Some of us are closer to 60 than others, so we can't do this anymore. So what happens is, inherently inside you, there's still that competitive urge to go out and show everyone how good you were, because you're not anymore. But what that ends up happening is people, when we hold events, people gravitate to whatever the fastest car is that they're trying to get hold of. So instead of making
they want
it about
that
the
advantage.
people, instead of making it about the people, we've tried to make it more about the cars, because cars are the stars in our opinion. And the coolest thing is, you said that you were big in the 90s. I don't know if you ever went to the earliest world championships. Obviously, you were in the post 2000 worlds. I don't know.
95 was
95. Okay, so you were at your Tarby Arena. Mm-hmm. So you remember being trackside, and they're all running the rims with the edge cut off them with the big Yokomo tires, and
I did all that.
Yeah, the B2s, and Kimball with his double X and all that sort of stuff. So that mental picture that you have in your brain, you'll never get to see that again, because next time you go out to a race meeting, everyone's going to be trying to gravitate to a triple X or a B3 or something. Do you know what I mean? So to be able to once again experience those cars racing against each other, we've taken the focus away from the driver, so we don't award any trophies for finishing positions. So essentially, what we have is a mobile museum. So we try to group the cars together in the same age eras. So then we get to see like a 1989 A final or a 1991, the Detroit cars and that sort of stuff. So that's really worked for us, because people know that the fact that they've got a cool car and they've put it on the track and it's got the right stickers on it and the right colors and the right size tires. And this is one of the reasons I nagged you so much about, going back to a 2-inch rim and a tire and that sort of stuff. Is just the look of the car, right? Yeah, look at that.
Ooh.
Come on.
Oh,
These are associated 2.0 wheels, but we did a bolt-in adapter so you could run 3/16 or 1/4-inch axle.
Oh, how cool!
Oh, cool.
And then we got the
Giddy up.
2.125 front wheel.
Yeah.
But we didn't use the flange bearing. We used the larger bearing. But anyway, there's your 2.0s.
But that
yes,
look is
please.
So that's what's really worked for us, and that's one of the reasons why our events become so popular, because people slowly the penny has dropped for them, the coin's dropped, and they've understood that by finishing first they haven't won. By being at the event and showing off their stuff is what wins them the event. Like
I think
look at that picture right there, Jason. When was the last time you saw Traxxas TRX ones on the track?
Never.
There you go.
I don't know. I mean, there was. Hold on, I'm checking something here. What's our? We got a race going on here in America. It's called the Wicked Weekend, and checking in on the results as they're kind of happening here. So we got Paul Wynn at the event. They got 838 entries. So yeah, I'm checking in on how it's going. But
that's even more.
To answer your question,
that's obviously not a race weekend. That's a race week for 800 entries, surely.
So yeah, to answer your question about the TRX1, we did have a good pocket of racers at Lake Park that used that car when Traxxas kind of went and did their race team there for a short period of time. And yeah, that's probably the last time I've seen that many together.
Now, I've got a question. I understand that you've got a little bit of a collection of some old RC cars.
Yes.
Floating around. You've been... What makes you choose the ones you've got? So now we're going to get into your brain and go, why are you selecting the cars that you're collecting?
Man.
Yeah.
I don't think there is any rhyme or reason right now.
Cool.
Yeah, I really don't. I have a lot of my personal cars that, I have my Worlds, my 99 Worlds B3, which I qualified 4th and finished 7th at the 99 Worlds. And I have that B3. I have my 2003 B4 that I qualified 5th at the Worlds with, and I think I finished 9th. Nice main events I had, I guess. But so I have that car, but I don't really have anything previous to that. So any of my original cars previous to 99, I don't really have anymore. So over the course of the years before Associated really started re-releasing stuff, I was like probably all you guys, you're buying stuff on eBay and everything else. And I got a good bit of, stuff that I've built, stuff that just I bought from somebody that was already built. Yeah. I have because that same Winter Champs that I went to in 1991, Jay Halsey actually TQ'd with the JRXT. So, Cliff won the main with the brand new RC10T, but Jay Halsey TQ'd with the RC or the JRXT, and he gave his truck away, and I actually won it. So I won Jay Halsey's JRXT in 1991, but what happened is when I moved to California to race and go to work, I guess my parents threw it all away. And so I don't have the JRXT anymore, but I'm sure you guys are familiar with like Jason Santos on RC10 Talk, and
Yeah.
He built that RC10T. He rebuilt it from the photos, and when he was selling stuff, he offered for me to buy it, and I bought it, and it was super. He wasn't trying to get a fortune for it. He knew that I liked it, and he sold it really reasonable. So I have the recreation of the J Halsey JRXT. I've got stuff that people traded to me. They wanted something, and they're like, "Hey, I got a Pro SE. I got this," and they're like, "Hey, we want to trade for some monster truck tires." I'm like, "Okay." So I got a JRX Pro. I got a bunch of RC monster trucks. That's my original JRXT that I had, and I painted that body. That was my shot at a Kyle Reed paint job, I think.
A bit of a Kyle Reed about that one.
So, and then that's the truck there, the JRXT, the one I bought from Jason. That was a recreation of the Halsey truck. But so yeah, I got a car that Masami gave me, a car, a B2 that he raced at the JMRCA Nationals. I have that. I have a bunch of my own stuff. I have a bunch of Mayfield cars that he used that he didn't want after a Worlds. He's like, "I'm done with it. You want it?" I'm like, "Sure." So I got Mayfield cars. I got cars that Kinwald built. That stuff that I sent to him, and I was like, "Hey, let's build a B6, but let's put all this stuff on it." And he built certain cars that I have that he built. Jason Santos, he's built a couple other vehicles that I worked with him on. I got all that stuff. So like I said, the collection really doesn't have a lot of rhyme or reason. I got some BJ4 stuff. I got B44s. So what else do I got? Yeah.
Eclectic, I think, is the term. It's like my collection. It's eclectic. It's just whatever grabs your fancy at the time. You go, "That's a cool car. I want one of those, and I want to have one of those," and be able to look at it and just do stuff. So,
I have the 91. The 91 stealth car was at the Knicks. I have one of those that I got many years back. It's built, and I got a bunch of stuff. And I mean, I got a whole room. I think I counted. I think I have about 100 cars that are on the shelf. And then I think I counted about maybe 70 cars that are new in the box that haven't been opened. Something like that. And those are just like kind of my personal cars. And then we got all the stuff we use for work, which, we have all kinds of different cars, 8 scales, 10 scales, bashers, whatever. We got probably 200 different cars around here that are various makes and models. So
it's cool. I've got this, and Lou will probably, and Cookie will mention it, I've got this crazy collection of just old stuff and bits and pieces everywhere, and you just decide every now and then to bring one out and drive it and remind yourself of what they were like in the day. You'll just scoot around with it, maybe down at a park, not necessarily at a track, just to remind yourself of what it was like to drive. And everyone goes, "Oh, are they bad or good?" And I'm going, some of the older cars are the ones that put the biggest smiles on your faces too, because they are weird. They drive strange. They weren't, they're not precise on the track anymore. They do strange things and slide, and you're just rolling around the floor laughing and reminding yourself of what it was like as a kid, just to play with all those old toys. And it's sort of the thing. So I was a bit curious about what drove you to collecting stuff you know, because I know I'm on RC Tech and I've seen some of the stuff that people have talked about you having, and you sort of go, yeah, I've got them. I wonder if he drives them or not, or whether they just sit on the shelf and you just look at them.
I have just a couple that I drive, like if we have a race for vintage or something. And yeah, I don't have a big collection that I drive. I just I have a small amount that I drive. Like, you know, for the vintage Clash of Champions this year, we did the you know, I had my RC10 Worlds car that was from 2014, one of the re-releases, and I went with a friend of mine, Jeff. We went to in Jonesboro, Arkansas. They had a race where they said, "Hey, if you bring the vintage cars with, you can, you know, we can race them." And so I brought it there as just sort of a a warm up to do the vintage race that we had. And I brought that 2014 Worlds car, and while I'm there, I just kind of upgraded the parts that I was either breaking or popping off ball cups or whatever while I was there. So it was great because by the time I got to our actual vintage race, I kind of went through all the pains of
Yep.
that I so I didn't really have to experience that at the actual race. I did a little bit with the car that Cedric built for me. You know, Cedric built me a long arm RC10.
Yep.
And I got that, and there was a couple things, not that he did, but just the nature of the track and the way the ball cups are on the car that I was having just a lot of problems when I first got out there. But there was enough practice at the race that I could sort that one out.
Yeah.
And then the World's car I had was already sorted out from the week before or the 2 weeks before. So I really had two pretty bulletproof cars, right? Like by the time I was racing, I was really comfortable with them not having issues or breaking or popping off ball cups, and I could concentrate on the driving. And as you said, some of my best runs, well, the best runs that I put in all weekend were with one of two of the vintage cars. And I also ran my B7, which was good. I mean, I did good with it, but my best runs were with the vintage cars. And the cleanest runs I did were with the vintage cars. So even though, like you're saying, they feel a little different or a little goofy, what was interesting to me is I actually felt more comfortable driving them with the knowing their sort of the pluses and minuses of what I could and couldn't do. I was more comfortable in that position than I was probably in the position I was with the B7, where you could be more aggressive because there wasn't any concerns of having these problems, where
Yeah.
I was more accustomed to the conservative nature of the other cars, where you had to sort of drive them with a you got to think a little bit. You got to think ahead a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with those old ball cups. If you use an old generation ball cups, you go around the corner, they look at an apex, and the wheel falls over.
Yeah, it's just today they just don't work at all. Like that's the number one thing. I think we did a video at this race, and I talked about where it was like that's the one thing that I think the next step with this is sort of a kind of like a it's almost like you know when you have a computer or a program and then there's like some kind of service pack update.
Yep.
Like you need like a service pack update for these things that just make them a little bit more bulletproof.
J Concepts ball cups and ball.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Used to be once upon a time was
cups.
MIP.
Yeah.
You used to be able to get the MIP balls and the RPM ball cups.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even today the RPM ones used to be so good. And I see today you can't use the RPM ones; they pop off just like the associated ones.
Yeah, they do. Yep.
The only real answer today is, I mean, I got people all the time. They send us photos and stuff through customer service, and right away they're putting those fluorescent yellow ball cups on and pink ones, and I'm like, hey, these. I hate to say it, but they don't work anymore. Like if you don't use the B6 or the B7 ball cups and the ball studs, you're kind of screwed. Like it just. You're not gonna, and it's just, you just need to do that these days if you're going to complete good and clean qualifiers, because it's just too frustrating otherwise. I mean, guys were buying like the re-release RC10Ts and throwing them out there. And like you said, you can't go through 3 corners without the ball cups hanging off of it. And that's too frustrating to want the person to continue doing it.
Yeah, that's right. But then if you try and put the big ones on, you've got that interference where you've got the old design, and because they were designed for those small ball cups. So you just got to get that juggle right where you're going, I want to upgrade the ball cups, but I can't be too much because then I can't have the suspension go up and down with the wheel turned the right way. So it's just all those fun things.
Yeah, exactly. You got to know what to do and what you're doing. Otherwise, you can make it worse pretty quick.
That's right. But no, that's cool. No.
Just keep your eye open for Jake Concepts ball cups coming out summer 2026.
The service pack.
The service pack.
with those new wheels with the blooming adapters, so you can go to.
I like that.
Adapters on them.
Yeah, that's in the service pack, right?
Yeah, that's a service pack. Wheels, tires, good rubber, ball cups. It's done.
Make your RC10 go 5 minutes in a qualifier with the
So, going, Jason, what do you you sort of mentioned that you're working on 1.9 and 2-inch tire. What can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, like we talked about, we are committing to doing a 2.0 front and rear tire along with a 4-wheel front. They'll probably just have one tread pattern, and then the front tire for buggy. 2-wheel, I guess, is a ribbed front, and then the rear or the front of the 4-wheel just matches the rear tread pattern. And I hope to be able to take some down there or ship them down there to the bash race, and you guys can check them out and see how they look. And that's the plan anyway. I have the wheels sitting here, but I don't have any tires sitting here yet to show, but that is the plan.
We'll do the old cut and shunt like Masami used to do. Yeah. Cut a bigger tire down and glue it down, or with the super glue.
Yeah, I mean that certainly does the job. Absolutely. I mean, what's this one here? Is that a mini pin?
All right, so that one is a Proline XTR 8080.
Oh, the 80s, yeah.
80s, yep.
And that's the round 80s. That's not.
Yeah, that's a round 80, not the flat 80s. So that's that's on a 2-inch Kaisho rim. So that's fits a 2 or 2.1 inch rim. But we used to stretch them across on a 2.2, but you can also go down. And that's an old Proline bow tie. Oh. Remember those?
Yeah, so you just cut it down and made it for the.
Made cut it for the 2-inch rim.
Yeah,
but just that look.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be very, very soft either. Like it, anyway.
Yeah, I mean that. Obviously, what we want to do is keep it somewhat simple with the treads and the compound. But we already have a 1.7. We have a 1.9 available.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, they're awesome.
And then we obviously have a ton of 2.2 options. And then what we want to do is we're going to throw that 2.0 option in there. That was your recommendation, and we're going to try it. Yeah. Sometimes we go for these things, and
super cool.
I wouldn't mind if it took off.
Well, you'll be sending a lot down here for us anyway.
Yeah, I think, like you said, if you're going to run a short arm RC10, you kind of want to have the 1.9s, the 1.7s. Yeah. If you're gonna, I think it matches the look, it matches the car. If you're gonna go to that next generation, whatever, a team car, the Pro SE, it's nice to have the 2.0 stuff on there.
Yeah.
Then you jump generation, you go to the World's car or anything after that, or even an 89 or a 91 car. I think you could put 2.2s on there. That's probably,
just need to make those wide 5s like Kinwald ran at the Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have some right here. I bought some the other day.
What are they? 81 7s or 81 something? I can't remember. I found a box. Yeah.
I'll tell you in a second. What do we got here? Yeah, the Pro 105s.
That's right. The 105s.
So the wide 5.
Yep, the wide 5.
Have you got the rears, Jason?
The wheels?
The rear tire.
The flat, what were they? Flat stubbies.
The stubbies, yeah. Stubbies.
Oh, you got some.
Oh,
yeah.
That's gold. That's like cryptocurrency there.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I remember getting these and running them, and you know what's interesting about that Worlds event is I know, you know, obviously there was a lot of promotion and stuff with Brian's car after the race, having these wide fives on the front, but I know he ran low-C fronts in at least one of the mains.
Yep.
I think it was on when the track was wet. I think I
Yeah.
can't remember if it was wet or dry. One of the conditions because it rained, I think, and he ended up running low-C fronts in one of those mains. I think, but
If my studs.
There was a photo.
yeah,
With, there was a photo with the car with the low-C fronts on it somewhere. I got to find it.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
was it the outside rib cutoff
Yep.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty typical of what we would do in those days, especially if it had, you know, it was rained or watered.
Yeah.
We used to cut that outer row off, or the outer rib off.
To get a bit more bite or to make it more consistent.
Yeah, I mean that was something we did at Lake Park all the time. But I think that was a one of the original Kinwald tricks. I don't know. I'm sure somebody maybe have done it before him. But that's certainly where I got it from.
Yeah, but he was just that one of those classic innovators. You know, he'd try things that other people wouldn't, like those BK bars where he turned the tires inside out and stuff. And you're going, man, he just thought just like 2 steps ahead. He was just there.
Yeah, and it came from, I think, that he just he didn't do anything else but RC stuff. So he had he had a lot of time on his hands, as they say, and he used it pretty wisely.
Yeah. No, we used to, because we wouldn't see him race at the local tracks, but we'd hang on for the magazines, and you know, you'd be rushing down to the local store, the corner store, to buy the magazine, and you'd get it and you'd flip it straight open to the big American races and see what you guys had been doing to your cars, and then try and copy them onto ours. So like we were there with hacksaws and lathes and drills, you know, just going nuts, and then you'd be rushing to the track that next weekend to bench race with your mates and then test it and see if it went better or worse. And a lot of the time it was psychological. You know, you had a car that looked like Kinwald's. You got it 5 seconds a lap, you know, 5 seconds at the end of your race just because you had a car that looked like Brian's or yours or Cliff's or Jay's or Gil Lossie's or, you know, Jack Johnson's or someone like that, and you just go quicker.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these photos he's scrolling with here, stuff that we took at different races. Obviously, there's the famous photo with him with Drescher. We didn't shoot that, of course, but I think the one, you know, the one with his car here from Finland, that was a photo I shot of him with his B4 there, and then maybe the one with the short course below that. That might have been from our photos, and the Worlds at the 2013 Worlds, I think, is the one there in the center with the J Concepts logo behind them. And a lot of these are from races we did with Kinwald kind of after his heyday.
When he'd still beat like 99% of the population anyway.
Yeah.
You know, that would be nice to say, you know, you're on your downhill slope and you're still quicker than the vast majority of the population.
Oh, yeah. And I'm trying to remember the last race that I felt like him driving like Kinwald or having a performance like Kinwald. And what was strange is later in the game with his Associated stuff, when he went back to Associated, he was doing so much short course racing.
Really?
And he was doing a lot of short course racing. And 2-wheel drive, and then he got into some 4-wheel. He was doing a lot of short course. Because we're talking about like 2010, 11, 12, which was the biggest thing at the time was short course.
Yeah. Well, that's that truck thing that I think, you know, and is that a little truck sitting on the shelf behind you, right directly over your head? There's a little.
Yeah, we got some models here.
Yeah.
We got some models here that one of them is a Bigfoot Play School truck from the 80s. This is a Bigfoot, I think it's a 16th or 18th scale Franklin Mint model that my buddy Fred gave to me. So lots of good stuff.
Yeah, we get them down in Australia every now and then. We don't get the big blooming circuits like you guys do, where you've got everybody there. But we get a couple of them down here, and it's just nuts. They're crazy.
Yeah, today what they're doing is it's pretty nuts.
Mm.
But you know, that's where Stadium Truck came from. It was originally called Monster Truck.
Yeah.
I think actually on the box for the RC10T, or not the JRXT, it says Monster Truck.
Monster Truck.
Yeah,
On the kit box, it doesn't say Stadium Truck. So that's where it all came from. All of these trucks in RC started as monster trucks. Yeah, I mean, a Blackfoot, a Monster Beetle, a Lunchbox, a Midnight Pumpkin, the Clodbuster. All these things were modeled after real monster trucks. That's where they came from. And then when Team Losi got in the game with the JRXT, that I'm sure they're just like, I guess we call this thing a monster truck. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like,
Well, they had the Revolution motor was an MTM monster truck motor.
Yeah.
So you're probably spot on. So Jason, you're back out here in October for the World Championships. You're going to Jurassic Park, also known as Castle Hill.
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, yep. The question on everyone's lips, obviously, is have you managed to extend your stay to come out to the Bash?
You know, we haven't made our arrangements yet for that Worlds because we're making the arrangements right now there's an e-buggy Worlds this year. It's in Portugal. So we're doing that first. That's coming in August. And then we'll probably book our flights. More than likely, if I go to do the Bash race, it'll happen in 2 trips. Because I think we figured the other day, Andrew and I, that it's 3 weeks between the 2. So I want to say that if I tried to stay the whole time for a month,
you'll start getting an Australian accent.
You know what? When I'm there for a while, in my head, I start doing that. Like, I'm sure in a month, if I was there a month, I would come back home and I would probably have some kind of accent.
Yeah,
for sure.
Nobody would understand you once you got home.
Oh. And he'd eat Vegemite.
Well, you know, like when I was there for that warm up, when we were there, and you're there a week or less, and in my head, if you're talking to yourself, right, like you start almost speaking to yourself with that accent and using the words, using the same words, right? Like you know, it's, you know, you change the wording's different with things, right? The driver stand or the track, you know. I don't exactly know what all these they are off the top of my head, but there's a lot of things that are phrased differently, and you start saying that way after a while, and you go to order at the restaurant, you start to make the conversion. So after a month, there might be no turning back. You know,
no more fries.
Right. What were we on? Chips, right?
So you haven't ruled it out, is what you're saying.
Yep. And you'll have a Parma.
Yep. So if there is that magical second trip, I think we'll have probably have quite a few pretty cool cars for our '89 A final reenactment that we're going to be doing at the Bash, and would have to get you behind at least one of those, maybe a Halsey car or a Lett car potentially. What do you reckon of that?
Man, do I get to choose?
Oh, definitely.
Which driver I'm representing?
Yes. Who would you like to represent?
Who gets to represent Masami?
Does it have to be Japanese? Hara.
I think the interesting part is, I think I was closest with Cliff, to be honest.
Right. Yep.
I won Jay's truck. I've been talking to Jay a lot recently because we did that vintage race together here in the US, but he came out to an 8-scale race. So I probably have more recent discussion with Jay and than I do with Cliff, but I was a lot closer in my racing days with Cliff, more so than Jay, because Jay kind of got out. Cliff was obviously working at Associated, so I didn't see Jay near as much as I saw Cliff. So that would be my choice, probably.
So did you learn a lot off Cliff when you were racing with him, or was it all your own, like we did, your own mistakes at the track?
What I learned from Cliff, I guess, was because I worked at Associated in the summer of '95, and then in I think the summer of '96. But and I would go there occasionally for events, and it got to the point for me, like when I first started going to Associated, that you'd have to go to the front, the reception area, and they would have to let somebody know that you're there, and then they would come get you and bring you back, and then you would hang out somewhere. But it got to the point after you worked there a little bit, where I did in the summer of '95 and '96, and to the point where when I would show up they would just say, "Oh, hey, you coming in to see Cliff or Mike or whatever," and you would just walk in and go behind and just walk to where you needed to go. And that was like the ultimate honor back then, to be to not really be an outsider. They were like kind of part of that family with Cliff and Mike and Gene and Roger and Curtis, and then the so but what I saw from Cliff was that it was actually a job, and that RC, as a racer, all you really thought about was living in your own racing world, and what you could do to perform, or what you could get to race better or have a better performance. But what I learned being there was, it wasn't just these guys just don't go race all the time. They just don't go practice all the time. That there was a job, that there was a responsibility there, that you had to, that they were responsible to, work on new product, figure out issues, figure out problems, design new things. And Cliff brought me to several times to where they would get their items molded at, like the gearbox, the all their plastic parts. He brought me along to some of those trips that he would go on and look at items in the works. And as a racer, you always thought, well, why don't we just have new parts all the time? Why don't we have new updates or new parts? And when I spent time with him, he realized that it was a business. And you'd go to this mold shop, you'd see them at the time. I want to say it was, a transmission case or something that I saw when I was there, along with AR molds. And you'd realize, wow, this is a big undertaking. Like, this isn't, you don't just snap your fingers and you have new parts for these cars. And then on top of that, what you have to be concerned about is obsoleting your own product. And that's why the '89 car was a top secret car. That's why they didn't let people see it. That's why they didn't let people know what they were using and running, because what happens is when you tell people you have something new, the old one doesn't sell.
Yeah.
So what I learned there is wow, this, the business side of this, making the parts, designing the parts, the actual the costs. Although I wasn't, introduced to the cost of what these things were, I understood that they were big, because it was always usually one of the things that would come out that you would hear Cliff say all the time was, it's too expensive. The expense is too high. We could do this or we could do that, but it's the expense is too much. And what he's saying is, to make this part the way that you think that it should be made, the mold's going to cost this amount, and then the parts are going to cost this amount. And in order to make that a sellable RC part, it doesn't meet the range of the expense was going to be too great, or the kit price would be too high. So he was always thinking in terms of, And according to him, Roger was his mentor, or Cliff would be my mentor.
Yeah.
Uh, and Roger kind of instilled in him a way to build these cars and parts to not only think about what was going to be good for performance, but what was good for the company in terms of um, making a platform that was versatile. Maybe you could make a buggy and a truck, or you could make certain items and molding together, mold parts together to save costs. And a lot of these things I picked up on by being there and being around Cliff and kind of understanding that. So this is the reason why we don't have a new car all the time or new parts all the time, because you have a tremendous commitment into this RC10 platform, and it was always good to them. And sure, they wanted to win the Worlds in Australia in 1989, but they didn't want to kill the sales of the RC10 that was going on at the time to do it. So they hid the car that they ran, and in those days, they could do that because there was no social media, the video, and the people's. They seemed to keep the privacy level very high, and people were obviously pretty respectful of what they were doing, and it allowed them to come back home, never sell the car, continue to sell RC10s, and make vehicles alongside of that platform for many years, long enough for them to make a whole nother car 2 years later. Although it was harder to keep that one more secret. There's more photo, it was more photos and more. But I really think that they thought they were going to make a version of that car. But I don't think I think they got home, and all the running they did afterwards, it didn't perform like the RC10, and they just sat on that design for another 3 or 4 years until they made the B2, which kind of caught them up with Team Losi in terms of their materials and their molding techniques. And I want to say between 90 to 95, they were a little bit behind with their materials and the CAD design work and techniques. And by the time that B2 came out, they were catching up in that area. But I was there a lot with Cliff, and he was my mentor, and that's kind of what I learned being there. And it wasn't so much really anything about the cars. I kind of learned a lot about that on the run by myself, along with other racers and drivers at the time. And sure, if you had a question with Cliff, and he would help a lot, but really it was more of the other things that I learned.
Oh no, I was just interested because that standard alloy tubbed RC10 platform, Kinwald won in what 93, Pavitas won, in 94 with his versions of it. And it was just that constant evolution, of the car, and just that the continuing to keep the performance up that front end. And it was just there's that sort of interesting side of it as well, where, like Lossie was, and other people were making big jumps and throwing new designs out there. And you were talking about that. What's good for the company? Can we keep evolving the chassis and keep the performance there and keep it going until they made that jump in 94 to the B2?
Well, today, all the companies are trying to think of a way to make a new car. What can we do to make a new car? Back then, they were like trying to think of the reason why they shouldn't come out with a new car. Today, they're trying to think of a reason to come out with a new car, and back then they were trying to think of a way not to.
Yeah.
And so I think that I personally believe that they feel that back then, especially, two-wheel buggy was their class. They invented it as a racing class. And when Kyosho won the second Worlds, they were embarrassed. And, a lot of things were thrown against the wall there in terms of the Kyosho car, different tires that Kyosho brought to the race. And I think that they kind of got buzzsawed a little bit at that kind of an event. And I think the next 2 years they devoted to that, trying to win the Worlds again, because at that time period, I think it was they felt like the name and being associated with being the world champion meant a lot in terms of sales. And I think they went all out in those years to win those races with new cars and new designs. Could Masami have won the 89 Worlds with an RC10, long arm car, hard anodized shocks, and a stealth transmission? I think so.
Well, Craig Drescher
Could they have?
was in the A final with pretty much a standard graphite car, I believe, with the stealth.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, looking at the track, the race, what I've raced a long arm, or not a long arm RC turn, just the long front arms.
Yeah.
Could he won that race with an RC10? I think so. Would they have gotten the top 3? Maybe. With the same guys? Maybe. If they ran, the Yokomo tires and all that type of thing that they kind of got, but they went all out for it. They went all out with a different car and tried to, I think, make the better piece for the race. And, it ended up the way it did. But I think but could have they won the 91 Worlds with an RC10? That would have
no
been
chance.
I don't think that was any chance.
No.
And they knew that. And it's arguably the Double X prototype was the better car on that track too, even over the stealth
so much
car.
better from the video.
But at the same time, it's there's no real way to know. Obviously they ran Losi tires too. They had different tires. They didn't run Yokomo tires in Detroit. Losi had made some different tires. They had step pins, I think. They had different front tires. And but only one of the guys made the main, only Kyle, and he one of my good friends, Brad, that I did the BJ4 project with, he's the B in BJ4. He raced that race. He was there. And and he says he thinks Kyle and the Double X was the better car on the track there. But he's like, the big thing that was the difference is they would groom the track there. So I don't know how they exactly did it, how he told me, but essentially, like, everybody got a groomed track at one point or another, whether it was you were in round 1, 2, or 3 of the grooming of the track. But so what would happen is they were still doing best time or fastest time at this point. I think it was 6 rounds of qualifying, or 5 or 6. And you can see them working on the track here and rolling it. But what he told me is, I don't know if it was round 3 or 4, Kyle Reed went out on a groomed track. He got the groomed track. Kyle Reed went out with the Losi car and just destroyed everybody on the groomed track. And Masami had been TQing up till that point. But then in the very last round of qualifying, Masami actually TQ'd by 5 seconds over Kyle on a non-groomed track. So he said that was the most impressive run of the weekend. He said nobody's ever seen it, but he's like, watching Masami beat the TQ on the bumpy track was, he said, the best run of the weekend. But yeah, when you watch these races, Kyle in the Surf's Up section here looked better. Masami looked a little hesitant, but ultimately him and Rick Velo here were they ran better races. That's why they won. Kyle made mistakes here. He had the one where in the Surf's Up where they got together and the turn marshal fell on them. Yeah. Which was Kyle's probably his best shot at it. But I think in general, in my racing days, whether it was a stealth car or not, it always seemed like, so there's a traction roll at the end of the front street, or the back street, and that probably hurt. So in my experience in racing, the Losi cars were always better on the bumpy tracks. So when I watched this, I was like, stealth car or not, I was like, well, it's just normal. The Losi car is always better on the bumpy track. Like,
It was the same.
And
It was the same down
Yeah.
here at that time.
yeah, yeah, I was like, well, this doesn't anything any different. Like the Losi cars, I was better on the bumpy track. So, um, the fact that Masami still won was kind of like it was almost like a sigh of relief probably for the AE
Just a
crew
freak.
because because
Alien.
yeah, and then Rick Velo, from what I understand, everybody that was there, Rick actually thought that he won the overall after the third main.
Yeah, he celebrated
because
on
of
the stand, didn't he? Like he was fist pumping.
correct.
And,
He thought that he won, but the IFMAR system of the way that they settled the tiebreak went to Masami, not to Rick, and he thought that he actually had earned the win with the points or whatever it was. I think they actually tied. Did they tie on points? I think, and Masami might have won.
Yeah, I think they both
I
had
can't remember
first and
exactly.
second, and maybe a fourth.
I can't remember how they settled. I can't remember how they settled the tie in. But yeah, Rick thought that he won, and I mean, there was another Worlds that I want to say Mike Reedy told me. So yeah, here's the car, and that actually doesn't look like Losi tires on the back there. That's like either a Yokomo or a Trinity tire or something.
Where are we?
Okay.
But that front tire on Kyle's car, that looks like the one that they have
single
there.
rib.
Yeah. I love this paint job. Obviously I tried to copy it from my truck, but
yeah,
you did.
On my JRXT when I built it as a kid, that was the first paint job I tried to copy. Yeah, so I think that I just always thought that Losi cars were better on bumpy tracks, and that existed, man, into the 90s. So there he's got the 2.0 rear wheels with the those are the jamming rear tires probably.
So that's the reproduction that Andy and I worked together to make of that car.
Yeah.
I'll bring. Got your pics. I'll
So
bring
everybody made. Everybody made the associated 89 and 91 cars, like you said yourself. Okay. You've got the Nix car, but the Losi guys got left behind. This is such a car that never existed for anybody. So we trailed through the internet for months trying to find little pictures and hints, and we managed to get together our own reproduction of that car.
It's a beautiful car too.
Super cool.
I think that looks like it's got the 2.0 rear wheels, right, with the jam and step pins. Is that what those are? The rears are the jam and step pins, or did Losi have a branded one too?
Yep.
Yo, those are the jamming ones. I used to ram those. They're good.
Jamming J710.
They were nice. So yeah, I've only seen one of these cars in person, and Gary Kai's had one in his office at Losi. And when I raced for Losi and I worked for them for a small period of time, he had this car still in his office that he raced in Detroit.
Oh, wow.
That's the only one I've seen in person. I think Gil Jr. said that the ones that he had burned in his garage, I think. Yeah, this is the one that I saw. Yeah, this is the one that I saw. And I while we're on this car, really, there's not many sexier RC photos on the front of a magazine than the Kyle car coming over the hill from Savannah.
Yep, and I've got that here too.
I'm sure he's got that one at a click away.
That should be the wallpaper, right? Desktop.
Yeah.
Jason, I love that you're a little bit of a RC tragic like we all are down here.
Is that the same as a nerd?
Yes.
Well, we can't call them RC. Yep.
Yeah.
So I was actually at the race with the one with Kyle going over the hill.
And that's where we're jealous of you guys.
Yeah.
because you actually got to see it firsthand, and we only got to see it in magazines.
That's it. Look at that.
Yeah.
This guy that's number 3 here, this guy still races.
Yeah, wow.
But he obviously had one of the new cars. And then the third car behind there is another one of the new cars, right? I don't know
Really?
which one
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
is. But yeah, I think this is from the stock main, because I think Kyle TQ'd stock, and this guy with the number 3 was third qualifier.
Yep.
But yeah, this is from the 91 Roar Nats in Savannah, Georgia.
Was that the one that you went to where you won the truck?
No, so the Winter Champs was the 91 Winter Champs. I won the truck. And then, but I went to this race, whatever month it would have been in. I don't really know what month it would have been in at that time, but yeah, I was there and I watched that race. Single A main events. I think Kyle TQ'd Mod also, but he didn't win.
Who can forget these articles in the
We lived through those articles.
magazine. We'd all drool over them, trying to pick up little details and.
Yeah, this was a tough thing, in my opinion, for Team Losi to do at the time. You know, that they weren't in the business as long as Associated, and they still felt comfortable essentially running a new car at the Worlds and coming right back. I don't remember how long it was between the Worlds and this race, but I don't think it was that long in the grand scheme of things. It must have been a couple months, maybe a month or two. And so yeah, the Associated guys actually obviously came back after the Worlds in Detroit, and they came back to this race and ran a regular RC10. But the Team Losi guys ran the same car. Basically looked like they just switched tires. You know, they just went to the 4 rows, which we all ran there. And this is Kinwald trying to
That's the end of the video.
Oh, okay. So did Kyle win mod? Is that what it was? Did Kyle win mod here?
I think
I don't remember. Yeah. Yes. Did he also win stock?
Not 100% sure.
I'll tell you in a second.
Savannah, Georgia.
This is the race I kind of fell in love with Kinwald's driving. The JRX Pro Double X.
Yeah, they didn't actually have, from what we can see, they never really had a official name for this. I remember them floating around the Double X moniker, talking about Double X this and the prototype car. I can tell you that at that stage, I was on the Australian Team Losi team, and we picked up the phone and rang Team Losi, like got up in the middle of the night to ring Team Losi and spoke to Gary Kais and asking him if we could get maybe a couple of these prototype cars, and he literally just laughed it off. We struggled to get enough parts for our own team guys, and so 30 odd years on, pretty understandable.
Sorry, kid.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
From what country?
Enjoy for
what
you.
Country? How many people?
Yeah, where are you from? Austria.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was
super cool.
That
great
track.
Euro.
I loved that track, the Savannah track.
SCRCs.
Yeah, my buddy said the other thing that happened in Detroit was everybody was running cheater batteries if you're on one of the bigger teams, because you're going 5 minutes. And he said that at least the Reedy guys would put the yellow heat shrink on their batteries. And he said, but like the Trinity guys, they were still putting the red heat shrink on. And he said, he's like, we were supposed to believe that Kyle was going 5 minutes with what are they called? SCR?
SCRC?
No,
SCRs, 1400
Yeah.
SCRs, but they were running the
Yeah.
Panasonic P170, the second worst battery ever made for the RC industry.
Yeah, he said there was no way that Kyle was running the red heat shrink batteries, and he's like, at least
Not
the
with an
Reedy
11
guys.
pound crystal motor.
Yeah, he said at least the Reedy guys were putting on the yellow heat shrink. It was more believable.
1400s versus 1700s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, we've gone 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Jason's probably ready for dinner.
You guys are ready for breakfast?
Right. Just been a lot of black coffee right now.
Jason, thank you so much for your time. We will keep nagging you between now and when you come out to Jurassic Park to see if we can lock you in and take that second flight to the land down under, because we would love to have you at the Vintage Bash.
Third this will be the third this year.
Yep. Third trip to this beautiful country of ours. We'd love to put a transmitter in your hand and see you driving the Cliff Lett painted 89 car on our 89A final revival. It'd be magnificent. It'd be good to meet you in person too. I don't think I'll personally go to the Worlds, but who knows? I may go there for a bit of a watch and see. If we don't get you on video again between now and then, once again, thank you. Appreciate it. We look forward to working with you with regards to these little tyres that I think are going to be a big hit with all those vintage cars.
Yep.
And wish you the best for the Worlds.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I mean, I've been talking to some of my buddies about this idea of coming to the Bash race. And I got a few friends I've been talking to about it already. So it's definitely not out of the question. So
I'm sure
a
Ray
lot of
Monday would love to have you down here.
Yeah, I mean, we want to get through this 8-scale e-buggy Worlds, and then we'll kind of start planning our second part of the year with obviously the Worlds there at Hills. So we got to get through planning that. I talked to Andrew the other day. I asked him how far it was from Hills to Knox, and I'm like, could you like drive there? And he's like, well, I guess you could. You could.
You can.
We have. We do.
But yeah, like to me, I was like, man, if it was only like an hour away, I could like bring a car and drive it out there first. But it's obviously a little more of a commitment than that. So
yeah, you'd probably fly into Tullamarine here in Melbourne.
Yeah, I'd have to go Sydney to Melbourne, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Cruise over there. But I mean, I definitely would like to do it. I'm pretty excited about being a part of the event with J Concepts, and just seeing what you guys have done over the past few years. It's impressive because I know it's a lot of time and effort. You got to do these type of things. You got to do the promotion. You got to get everybody to show up, and then you got to organize it, and you got to race too, which everybody likes to do, right? You're doing all this work, plus you like to get out there and drive the cars, which everybody wants to do that. It's the other part that nobody really wants to do. So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you guys, the dedication to doing that, because that's the only way we have these events is the people that are passionate about doing them and putting them on. And it's definitely not to be the next millionaire, right?
Non-for-profit.
No.
Yeah, everybody always does that, right? They look at the entries and they say, well, they charge this much for the entries, so you add up the entries plus the entry fee, and man, these guys are making so much money doing this. All right, man.
Yeah, we've got a nice little spreadsheet that has the expense section as well. Yep. And on that we are getting in our RC race media guys. You would have met them as well at the pre-worlds. Yeah, so we've got them on board for this event, which obviously is part of the expense, and why guys like you can help us to
it's the same guys.
have a drink of water. Yeah, so it's
it's huge.
Yeah,
it's huge to bring the live content and everything, and for sure, I'm looking forward to all the way all the stuff shakes down. I mean, the rest of the year. I mean, we're kind of in for us, we're in the summer, so it's kind of like it's dragging a little right now, right? Like it's everyone's a little bit burnout, but then once you kind of like round the corner off of summer here, and we got all these, probably we'll start with this E worlds, we'll get into the 10 scale worlds, and then I think the RC world's going to be pretty excited as we get to the end of the year here.
Yeah, just build those little events building up to the bash at the end of the year.
Exactly, the big blow off.
Yeah.
600 cars.
Yep.
What's the record out there? Do we count?
Yeah, we
got up?
We had just over 500 last time around the track, sort of side by side. Is our money shot photos that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, this year we're trying to work out how to top that.
Yeah, it's it's impressive, and I don't think that everybody quite can. It's hard to really understand these numbers until you start to see them in person and realize how many vehicles one person can have, but then on top of that, how many that they're passionate about. So I think that's you just got them lining the inside line here all the way around, or it's,
just one side of the track,
the border.
Yep.
And I mean, this is is it 1 or 2 days, the event? Is it 2 days?
3 this year.
Okay, 3.
4.
Yeah, 4 days. 4 days totally. With a sort of
that's good. So Thursday is a practice day, I guess.
Yes.
Or is that set up?
Yeah. Do you want to go through the planned schedule at this point, Lou?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're still trying to juggle because everyone wants a race, but it really isn't a race meeting as such. So we've brought in the Reedy format. So literally it's line them up and go. So at this stage, Thursday is going to be our, open track. Everyone can get a bit of a practice, set their cars up, do whatever they want to do. Then we're still tossing up whether or not we bring in our concourse and everything on the Thursday or leave it till the Friday. Friday, we're going to do stadium trucks. Stadium trucks in the 90s down here was huge. So I know that's dear to your heart. We're also going to do Hornet Evo racing. And for that, we've got a whole heap of Japanese guys that are coming out, amongst them Tsushihara. And he's hanging out to have a go at our track. Mm-hmm. And we want to see him with a Hornet Evo painted in his colours, hopefully. And then we'll do two-wheel drive on the Saturday and four-wheel drive on the Sunday. Yep. So we've crowded it last. We think that 90% of the people that have ever had a transmitter in their hand probably started off with a Tamiya Grasshopper or a Hornet. So, and these re-release cars are pretty cool, and they sort of look like the original ones. But out of the box, just have a bit of fun, relive some of this stuff. And with a passing of Mr. Tamiya earlier last week. But we've lost a couple last week. Hulk Hogan too. That's a bit of a shock to us guys that lived in the 80s.
Yep.
So we may do a parade, just get everyone standing around the track, just with Tamiya to start with, and then maybe bring out some other cars as well.
So so Thursday got some practice. Friday maybe the parade, and then stadium truck.
Yeah.
Stadium truck on Friday, then Saturday 2-wheel, Sunday 4-wheel.
Yeah.
And then before you start the qualifying or whatever, is there any practice before qualifying?
I'm sure we'll fit something in. Yeah. It's just this is a loosely based sort of thing. It's
we're making it up as we go, right?
Making it up as we go, yeah. But we'll
right
lock in a schedule that everyone knows exactly what's happening at what time. But as I said to you earlier, it's it's not so much of results based. I'm the number one guy. I won It's about, you're a winner by being at the event and displaying the car that you have, whatever is the coolest, and the coolest that you got the car, the closer that the car looks like what it may have been when it was on the track back in the day, then we think that is the coolest. And generally, the trophies that we do hand out is for the most original, coolest looking cars.
Nice. I mean, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, on that note, Jason, thanks again.
Yes.
Thanks for jumping on board, and everyone that's online. I guess if you've got any questions with regards to our event, if you're overseas and you think you want to come out, just reach out to us through the Vintage Bash Facebook group. We're happy to answer any of the questions and assist you in any way we can to come and attend this event, which we think is one of the best ones in the world.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking more about it and talking to my buddies here and see if we can kind of convince them to do this thing together.
Awesome.
That'd be brilliant. Brilliant.
That'd be wild.
I've got a good feeling that you'll have a good chance to convince them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us what we have to send to you to make them come over.
I don't know that there's really much
Probably
other than just
the pictures.
Yeah. The photos.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. So I think we've covered most of the questions that some of the guys had sent in. Hopefully we've covered them off. So thanks to the guys that popped the questions in. I think we talked a bit about the J Concepts and the vintage racing scene. Why off-road is so big. I guess why it's been sort of captured our hearts and become such a big thing in terms of vintage racing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, all I really see there is it's the one that goes back, and it seems to be the most readily available vehicles. I think if you go too far back, there's just it's not as easy to race a 12 scale, old associated 12 scale cars with foam tires. You can't get an RC 500 and run 8 scale on road. And a touring car isn't quite vintage enough yet, but it's possible. I could see that one being another possible vintage item down the road. Going back to those early days of touring car, maybe that's another one that I could see working at some point. But yeah, there's just that the happy place is the 10 scale off road for vintage. It seems like it's just the age is lining up right for everybody. The kids of the 80s are like us, or we're old today, and so we like things from our past, and we're proud of the 80s and in the 90s, I guess.
Definitely.
People that did not live the 80s and 90s, they missed out.
Yeah,
big time.
They missed out.
Yep, that's for sure. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. And
no problem.
We will, we'll be chatting. We'll be in touch, and looking forward to the months ahead and seeing you down here.
All right. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, Jason.
See ya.
Thanks all.